what would you say this ruling means for you and means for the country?
What it means for the country is much restricted access to abortion, probably in many states, maybe something like half the states. What it means for me personally is that this right that I think many women, many people have depended on for my whole life is now not enshrined in the Constitution anymore. It is really up for grabs. And there are going to be all kinds of repercussions from that. And we really are kind of sailing into uncharted water.
Well, why do you think that happened? I mean, we're talking about 50 years of quote unquote settled law. And indeed, some of the conservative members of the court that decided to vote to overturn have said before in public and private testimony that they considered Roe versus Wade to be settled law. Am I just being too cute about this? Or, I mean, is this really an about face?
Well, they said it was settled law at the time they were speaking. That was a factual statement. They didn't say or promise that they intended to keep it as settled law. And the person they were really talking to at the time was Senator Susan Collins of Maine, who was a swing vote. She found those statements reassuring, but I think a lot of close observers at the time wondered what they really meant because they didn't make a promise into the future.
You say that as if you were one of those close observers, Emily.
Right. Well, I just never understood why it was so reassuring for people in the present tense to say something obvious, which was that Roe versus Wade was the law of the land, without saying that they intended to keep it that way. And that was always missing from the statements that Justice Barrett and Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch made during their hearings.
Now, what were the early alarm bells for you that this was possible / likely coming down the pike?
The Federalist Society and other conservative organizations have been working for decades to overturn Roe, to enshrine conservative judges throughout the federal courts, really to reshape American law. And they've been very successful. And I think many people, including me, have watched for years as abortion in particular really moved conservative voters, got people to the polls, made elections seem simple, like a simple moral choice. Whereas I think among liberals who support the right to abortion access, there was a sense that it was safe and some amount of complacency. It really didn't drive voters to the same degree. And so when you see that uneven kind of political ramification, you wonder, even though the polls show that most Americans supported Roe, support a right to abortion, you wonder whether the people who care the most are going to triumph in the end.
Now, I've seen a statement from Merrick Garland saying you actually cannot ban abortion pills because they are FDA approved. Is this something that is going to inevitably end up in the Supreme Court as well?
Yes. And I think what Attorney General Garland is trying to say is that because the FDA regulates the pills, that preempts state law. And that's a pretty basic principle. Federal regulation gets to trump essentially state regulation. But yes, I think that question is going to wind up in front of the Supreme Court. And even sometimes when rules seem like they generally apply, they can look different in the context of abortion, especially with this conservative court.